Hello, this is Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio and welcome to week 51 of creating a positivity deck. And the prompt for this week is transform. So, what am I thinking when I talk about transform? Well, if you look at the dictionary definition, it seems to suggest something that is a complete change. Sometimes a change that happens very quickly. But I think transform, in terms of us, in terms of humans, can be something that's quite slow to change. And it changes by way of age. We grow, we learn, and it changes by way of the relationships we have with different people. And for me, transform tends to always be a positive thing. So I'm going to pause there and just say a little bit about what I'm doing with the card, and then I'll come back to some of those thoughts. So all I'm doing is I have this page from a very old French dictionary, and I'm just going to cut a piece out or tear a piece out and stick it down to my card, and then I'll cut round edges just to neaten it. So yes, transform, something that's kind of happening all the time, usually for the positive, based on our experience, based on what we learn, based on our relationships. And as I say, for me, that's always a kind of positive thing. It's how we grow, it's how we move forward, it's how we learn things. But thinking about it in terms of this state of being, which is wild, I'm also thinking about transform in terms of how we create and what creativity and transform means. And also in terms of wild, thinking about, and I touched on this a week or maybe a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about wild, I'm thinking here that wild is about getting back to ourselves. So we do learn things, we do have connections with people, but there's something about us ourselves. And so there's something too about transform in terms of transforming, not back the way, but just recognising that we can also transform to be the person that's at our very core. Yeah, have I confused you? I know what I mean by that, and I'm sorry if I'm not explaining it terribly well, but I hope you'll catch my drift. So today with my card, what I wanted to do was just to use a few materials, not to pull out tons of stuff, just use a few. So I'm starting here with this just white acrylic craft paint. It's quite thin paint, and it really did the job here that I might have otherwise used gesso for, because I just wanted to knock the print back a bit. I didn't want it to be quite so obvious. And what I was about today was taking that notion of transform, taking a few materials and just seeing how my card would transform. So, as is most often the case with these cards, I don't have any plan in mind. I'm just going to see where it takes me. And you could see there the difference between the piece that I'd knocked back a bit and the original piece. So just going to neaten this up. The dictionary paper is very thin, so it's quite fragile in a way, but it stood up well. So I'm taking these Dr. P.H. Martin's Bombay inks, just in the 3 colours. So I decided they need a good shake, so off camera I gave them a good shake. It was a little while since I'd last used them. Then I'm just taking that small stick, just a cocktail stick, and all I'm going to do is to put initially a little bit of this yellow type colour down, Just a little drop. I don't want to saturate the paper. And then I'm just going to take the stick and just kind of drag it through the colours. Not looking to do anything in particular other than just to move that colour around. You'll see there's still some bubbles in the ink. That's just because I gave it a good shake, so there's quite a lot of bubbles in it, and you'll see it with each one as I bring the colour out. So I realise at some point here that I need to be careful because I just about go right through the paper underneath. Yep, just pushing it back into place. So this for me is the thing about creativity and art. It's about transforming the basic materials. So in this case, the ink, the paint, and I also use a black pen. So any piece of art that you create, any piece of craft that you create, that is all about transform, because you take the raw materials and you create something from it. You transform them when you're creating. So just pulling that stick through the colours, just looking at how they kind of blend with each other as I'm going along, thinking I quite like the pattern at times, but not becoming kind of wed to what's there, because after all, I know that I am probably going to go on and transform it. Just picking up some excess ink in places there and just pulling it out further. So now take the turquoise, and I know here that I'm mixing up the colours on the page and that probably some of what's on there won't look quite so good, but I'm not worried because I'm going to transform it somehow, or I'm going to work with however it looks in the end. So the turquoise is looking very dark there, but it will lighten a bit, but you can see it's starting to mix with some of the other colours. Just pulling it out in little thin strokes and then in some thicker strokes. So just continuing to pull it out until I've used up most of the ink. And having done this here, I might at some point try this again, perhaps in an art journal. So I'm just taking a piece of kitchen towel here, just gonna take up some of that ink, and what this also does is just to leave a slight imprint of the kitchen towel on the surface. So it's lightened it, but you can see that slight pattern left by the paper towel. And I'll use that bit of towel again. In the meantime, I do go off to take the ink off my hands because I hadn't put any art guard on today, so I didn't want that ink being absorbed into my skin. So again, just taking off some excess there. So I'm going to add a little bit more of the yellow. I just want it to come through a bit more, but again, the ink isn't actually dry, so it will mix a little bit on the card. And just doing the same kind of thing there. Just pulling it out. And you'll see it's almost turning green in places. And I just keep playing with that until I think that's enough. And then I just mop up the excess again with that same piece of towel. So at this point I will go on to give it a dry, because what I then do is I decide to put a little layer of white on it again, just to knock back those colours a little bit. I put a layer on, I decide there's too much on, and then I just take a piece of paper towel and pull some of the white off again, just with a little dab of water. Again, with this sort of thing, there's no right or wrong way. It's hard to say when or where I might think I'll leave that or I'll change it. It's just all about feeling my way through it and really just working intuitively and just seeing where it takes me. So as always, not rushing with the card in any way, just taking my time, enjoying the process, and just being, or just feeling that I'm creating something positive here. You'd see I pulled the end up a little bit there. I need to glue that bit of dictionary page back in place. So at this point I started to see something, and it was a face. And this section goes on for quite some time. So as I've done before, I'm going to leave you at this point, put some music on, and I will see you on the other side. And so this week she emerged. She is part of Transform. So some people have asked me what will happen after next week, after card 52. Well, I am going to continue with positivity into next year, and I'll be coming with an introductory video on that at the start of the year. I am transforming how I do this as well, so yes, more on that to come soon. So as always, thanks so much for watching. Bye for now.